A very good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where in the world you happen to be, and welcome to today's webinar, which takes ballast water testing and compliance, match fit and fit for purpose as its theme. The webinar is part of Riviera's Ballast Water Webinar Week and will be approximately 45 minutes in duration. The webinar is brought to us courtesy of our sponsors, so a huge thank you to Premier Partner Maritech, part of the CTI Group, and our other sponsor, Alfa Laval. Now, ladies and gentlemen, just before we get underway, I want to share with you key information that will support you in getting the most out of proceedings. First of all, please be assured we will send you the recording. Please submit your questions at any time because we do Q&A throughout the webinar. And any questions that we don't get to, we commit to coming back to you in writing within a week of transmission, meaning there's every reason for you to fire your questions in, confident they will be answered. Please stay tuned into the end so you don't miss out. I guarantee that over the next 45 minutes, we'll be sharing powerful, original, and exclusive insights of real benefit to you and your operations. So please stay tuned. At the end of the webinar, I'll be sharing an exit survey. Please take the 2 or 3 minutes to complete it, and in return, we'll send you the presentations and recordings. For enhanced viewing, please use the latest version of Microsoft Edge or Google Chrome. And in the unlikely event you lose sound, simply refresh and it will return. A word or two, ladies and gents, about your hosts, Riviera. Riviera Maritime Media is a maritime and offshore information specialist active in 4 areas: news, events, jobs, and data. To learn more, please visit the dedicated website www.rivieramm.com. Well, ladies and gents, this is me, Edwin, and I'll be moderating proceedings today. And speaking of today, this is the ground we will be covering. We'll look at rules around post-installation testing, who can test for compliance, market shakeout, how many providers will there be in 2025, and whether biofouling is indeed the next big thing. Here's our agenda, or in other words, how it's going to go. Presentations will be run consecutively and then followed by open discussions. Please submit your questions at any time because, as you know, we do Q&A throughout the webinar. At the end of the webinar, we'll be sharing key takeaways and conclusions and also previewing what's next. Well, what's next for us is meeting our panel, and we have a fantastic one in place. I'm delighted our friend Michael is here, Michael Haraldson. He is Global Business Development Manager, Ballast Water Testing with Maritech Pte Limited. Also on board is Victor Freiberg. Victor is Head of Global Sales with Pure Ballast, Alfa Laval. I'm delighted we have Girish here, Girish Menon. Girish is Managing Director, Design and Offshore Engineering with Aries Marine, based out of the UAE. During the next 45 minutes or so, we'll find time for a poll or two. And as you know, ladies and gentlemen, we value your questions, so fire at will through the messenger. Well, more than enough from me. Safe to say a huge thank you for joining us in such numbers and from near and far. High time we heard from the people we've dialed in to hear from. So Michael, as and when you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Evan. Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Yes, Maritech, we are fairly new in the ballast water testing, but as you can see in the bottom here, we have done a lot of things, and the common thing is lab testing. So this is something we know about. Why test in a closed system? Well, you don't test the closed system because it is already closed, but it is the commissioning testing. And the little things in the short period we have been involved with, we already know that a lot of owners doesn't understand how strict the regulation can be, or they are, and how difficult to actually have the system be approved. Having said that, the regulation of mandatory testing was supposed to become in force in October next year, but it was COVID-19. It had gone to May 2022 probably. But having said that, there's a few flag states that actually have already decided that you have to test your system if you install the system now. And the countries are Australia, Tuvalu, Greece, Cyprus, and Australia. This is about between 5,000 to 6,000 vessels, so that's still have started already. So what are we? Well, we think that because the regulations are so strict, we believe that it's very important that you have experienced technicians to come on the vessel to take the samples, and even more important, if the indicator testing is not failed, then you have to take the samples to the lab, and that's why we have all our technicians. We have ex-seamen, so they know how to handle themselves on a ship. And by doing this, we know that we can secure the whole chain. So who can do this testing? Well, we understand any testing company can do it, but to not have a flag state or a charter site hanging over you, you can get it approved by, for the moment, it's DNV, Lloyd's, and ABS. And then they will say that, no, we have approved your supply operations. So far we have got DNV. We expect ABS and Lloyd's later this month. But here also you can see a few certificates that we have as our QC. So, like I said, this is very strict regulations. And what we, not just because we are testing it, is, but if you install a ballast water treatment system now, especially retrofit, wouldn't that be nice after you have installed the system, before you leave the dry dock or repair yard, that the system is actually working? Because what would be worse, unless if you don't test it, you leave, you go to the first loading, that port authority decided, well, we're going to test the ballast water treatment system, and it failed. You're going to be kicked out, and now you're going to have to contact the charterer and this kind of thing and say, well, sorry, your cargo is going to be delayed. So that's what I think it is. Make sure that you have a working system. And we are not here to be difficult, but we just want to make sure that the installation and everything will be done in a proper way. That's all I had to say, and over to you, Edwin.
Thank you very much indeed, Michael. A great presentation to get us underway. Next up is Victor. So Victor, as and when you're ready, sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Edwin. So good morning and good day from me as well. I will today be speaking a bit on Alfa Laval's point of view regarding ballast water testing, the compliance testing, and what kind of challenges and opportunities we see for the industry in this arena. Let's see. So first of all, I mean, you all know that testing is a very broad term, and for ballast systems, it highly depends on the statutory party, IMO or US Coast Guard in this case, and also what phase of your ballast project you are within. IMO distinguishes between viable and non-viable organisms and allows therefore the grow-out method or the MPN method, where the US Coast Guard instead distinguishes between alive or dead. And that requires then the use of vital stain method. And Michael mentioned this as well, but the type approval testing is there to test the ballast system itself. And this is really conducted in a controlled lab environment. And this is also the case for the vessel general permit sampling that is there for those trading to the US. But then we have the upcoming commissioning test and potentially in the future these port state control tests that will be carried out as well. And this is where we potentially now will see these indicative testing methods. And as you can hear on that name, it's only an indication whether the water sample is compliant with the convention or not. And this is what we will focus this presentation about, these indicative testing methods and what we see in that arena. So if we look at commissioning testing and also then in the future potential various compliance testings to be carried out, it's important to note that these are done to verify installation and in the future also crew's ability to handle the system in the correct manner. And this is exactly what Michael mentioned as well. So, I mean, in other words, the commissioning sample is there to indicate if the engineering work has been done properly, if you have prepared for for the installation, and if you have done the actual installation in a correct manner. And I can assure you, I mean, if this is not done correctly, then you can have chosen the best system in the world. The water that you will discharge will still be out of compliance. And from our experience so far, the engineering work is really where everything starts, and this is really vital. And you as a ship owner should minimize any dead ends and ensure that you have the correct sampling points, etc. And from Alfa Laval point of view, we recommend that any engineering company you chose must have been trained by the manufacturer itself. And we also really recommend that you ensure that the manufacturer are doing an engineering review of the drawings that are submitted, because there's so much experience from the manufacturer that needs to be taken into account to make sure that installations are done successfully, and therefore also the later tests are done or become successful. And last but not least, ensure that the crew is properly trained. And I think this is maybe one of the aspects we see today that many owners are to some extent overlooking. So when it comes to choosing testing method, there are a lot of things for you to consider to ensure that you have a testing method and the testing equipment suitable for the ballast system that you have chosen. And I would say that the good thing is that the industry is really working hard on finding good solutions for handheld devices that easily can be used on board. On the other hand, the bad thing I would say is that there are still a long way to go until we have something fully functional for the industry. And it should probably also be mentioned that none of these methods that you can see on the screen here, they have yet to been validated in the environment they are now to be operated in. So in theory, it's fine, because we are, as I mentioned, we're talking about indicative testing, which then of course is testing that should give an indication. However, what we see today is the industry is not really treating this as an indication, but instead as a fact, which for many operators becomes very, very costly, since samples many times has to be retaken or maybe sent for detailed analysis. And some of you maybe have seen this in the arena, that one of the biggest testing companies has this year released a white paper on commissioning testings and their experience so far. And they actually did report that when they did both indicative testing, then followed by a detailed analysis of the same test, as much as 54% of these tests that in the indicative testing failed were proved to be correct on the detailed analysis. So this really proves the uncertainty of these types of tests, and that we as an industry really need to work together to find now efficient and reliable methods to ensure that the convention is fulfilled, but also that you as ship owners can operate efficiently without necessarily being punished without valid grounds for that. And in Alfa Laval, we have basically tested most of all these methodologies and equipments as well, and we have come to the same conclusions as this white paper that I mentioned. And therefore, at this point, we really recommend that the industry keep on trying these indicative measurements, but that you as a ship owner at this point go for detailed analysis to ensure that you don't have to waste time and money to redo things because you get the wrong indication of the test. So if we look a little bit on the timeline, for most ship owners, there's still some time because the earliest implementation from the IMO point of view will be in May 2022. However, we have, of course, seen a few flag states that has already started. And as mentioned on this slide, you have Cyprus, Singapore, Australia, and Greece, for example. And obviously, if you are flagged with any of these, you need to carry out the commissioning testing. But what we do believe is that most flag states, they are actually on a kind of holding position until the next MEPC to see what comes out of that, and most likely a lot will decide on their way forward after that. But from an IMO point of view, the May 2022 will be the earliest enforcement of this. And as a summary and conclusion of my presentation, I mean, we really urge you as a ship owner to start early, and the successful commissioning sample, it really starts already at engineering stage, and to make sure that you flush your pipes and clean your tanks before any installation. We believe that indicative devices, they still have reliability challenges and must be used with caution when checking for compliance of the installations, but we think that there's a very positive atmosphere in the industry to get there. ISO guidelines on how to actually validate these indicative instruments and compliance monitoring devices are under development, and we just expect that IMO will either implement the same or come up with something similar in due time. And last but not least, I think the industry must work together, and we from Alfa Laval, we really welcome improved indicative measuring devices, and we are happy to make our systems available for any kind of validation studies, because we believe this is an important topic for the industry, and we need to get it right. And with that, I say thank you, and over to you, Edwin.
Thank you very much indeed, Victor. A great presentation, which has stimulated a number of questions. Ladies and gentlemen, please keep the questions coming. More immediately, I'm delighted Girish is here. Girish, as and when you're ready, sir, the floor is yours.
Yep. Thank you, Edwin, and good day to everyone who have joined us today, and thank you for joining us in this presentation. So after Michael and Victor, I'll just go ahead with my side of it. I represent Ares Marine, which is a slide about us. Actually, we are one of the world's leading retrofit engineering service providers. As Victor had mentioned, engineering is one of the critical part, and the experience is what matters. So we have done more than 800 plus ballast water retrofit engineering projects, and with 3D scanning and engineering teams all over the world, Middle East, Mediterranean, North Europe, China, so the whole areas. And our experience, we have been working on all different types of vessels. More than 35% of it is actually the oil product tankers, 25% containers. So it's a mix of all different types of vessels, and also the different treatment systems, UV being a major portion of it, 60%, and I think a major chunk of it we would have done with Alfa Laval. So Victor, that's a big share of this thing for us. And once we go to the engineering flow, the workflow, actually the engineering starts in the pre-survey concept study part of it, right through 3D scanning, concept design part, and a basic design where the maker specifications and the maker's approval is also an important stage at this stage when the basic design is completed. And once the class rules and maker specifications are followed, we go into the detail engineering. And finally, site supervision and commissioning. It's critical that the engineering company who are involved have critical knowledge of what goes wrong or what are the issues during the installation and commissioning, so that the design that is being carried out caters to all these factors. A lot of system makers that we have worked with. So now there are so many system makers who have approved systems and installations all over the world, in almost all parts of the world. Ballast water regulations, they have had a long journey so far, 2004 from when it was adopted to various milestones we have covered in 2009, in 2016, and in 2017 when finally the regulations entered into force. And we have had just another deadline that we just passed from October 2020, 27th October, when the BWMS code has become mandatory. But the end of this experience building phase that IMO has projected will be sometime in 2022, 2023. And so which just goes on to show the huge amount of learning that we have, the whole industry has had, right from before 2004 to up till now. And as we have heard from my co-panelists, there is a lot of things to learn. Although the equipment manufacturing, the equipment side has become mature in the past few years, we still, there are a lot of things to learn, because we are actually into the commissioning and testing phase, where the owners will realize what they have spent the whole money for in the past few years. There are still a lot of uncertainties in installations. There are still a lot of problems that are occurring during installations, even after this huge learning period that we have had. So that is systems that there are still systems that do not meet the D2 standards on commissioning. Operation problems are still being reported by many of the ship owners with systems. There are, of course, failures in training processes and system faults, which may not be spotted at this moment, but during tests, this will leave the ship owners at risks. And also in the testing protocol, there is still regulatory uncertainties are there. The process and compliance testing and different types and sizes of samples required. These are still areas of uncertainties and still a lot of learning that is required. And in sampling, the possibilities of high margins of errors and possibilities of having inconclusive results. When will this trigger a full sample testing? So these are all issues that we are will be facing. Also, the logistical challenges in sampling, preservation, transportation, enumeration. So this all goes on to reinforce the fact that it is very important to find the right companies who undertake the testing. So before we go into this, it is important that we have the right system installed, a system that has a very proven track record, and the engineering has been carried out by a technical team with good experience, and the learning curve of past many years is utilized. It doesn't seem right that after so many years, if we still continue making mistakes on the installations or on the equipment part. So all that experience that everyone has gained has to be put into effect. Commissioning should be undertaken. That should be in close supervision of this of the makers, training of the crew, and of course, timely troubleshooting and maintenance support should be provided by the equipment manufacturer for all cases. Of course, COVID-19 has had an impact. Shipyards' capacities were down. There were scarcities, logistics and arranging, engineering, commissioning engineers. So all this has just brought out the fact that the companies that will remain in, say, 2025 will be the ones who have a wide network of personnel who can support the whole ship owners throughout the many years, the challenging phases that are still yet to come, and also the right engineering partner also who will have the whole range of activities and a wide reach, which will help us reach all parts of the world. So from my side as an engineering firm, these are the important factors for choosing the right engineering partner. Expertise in such presence in key shipping locations, which came out very clearly during these all these lockdowns due to COVID. So having a presence in different parts of the world is an important aspect. Liaising with class societies and makers and manpower availability right up to the commissioning stage. These are all important factors in choosing the right engineering partner. And this is another thing, the biofouling is regulations that could be coming up is something that impacts actually ballast water management. Right now, biofouling management is not part of the ballast water management convention, although it is also a sort of a contributor to transfer of invasive aquatic species, which is why the ballast water regulation initially came in. But IMO needs to address all these uncertainties with the ballast water management before going into the impending biofouling regulations. And the worry is that the concentration or the stress on this biofouling regulations could leave the ballast water management aspects still that are to be clarified on a back burner. So that's also something that has to be looked at. So just wanted to touch upon that that point also. Thank you from my side. Over to you, Edwin. I hope I was able to clarify.
Wonderful. Thank you very much indeed, Girish, and thank you, gentlemen. what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you momentary respite, gents, before we start tackling these questions. And I'm going to come to the audience with some poll questions. So ladies and gentlemen, on your screen now, you will see a question. It says, do you have knowledge of which test method that is most suitable for a successful testing, i.e. avoid incorrect answers due to the tool? So how confident are you in your knowledge of the test methods and their suitability for successful testing? So ladies and gentlemen, we'll run the poll for about 10 seconds and then I'll let you know how the different responses have ranked, but we will break down the precise voting in an article carried on rivieramm.com after the webinar. Well, what I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, is there is one option which is a little bit ahead of the other, and it is the no response. So no is polling ahead of yes, but the extent to which it's polling ahead we'll detail in that article. And this might be something that the panelists choose to reflect on a little later on. Let's do another survey question, ladies and gentlemen. We're getting nicely warmed up. Here we go. Another binary question. In other words, it's a yes, no. Have you performed testing of your BWTS on board your vessel? On board being the operative part of that question. Either you have or you haven't. Please let us know. Thank you for responding in good numbers. What this allows us to do is really get a representative sample of market mood and behavior. It's completely anonymous. So just another 10 seconds on the clock before we deep dive into the questions. So if you haven't yet voted, please register now. And what I can tell you once again, there is a clear preference for one of the responses. And in this instance, again, it is the no response. And it is polling, my crude maths tells me perhaps a third ahead of yes, but we'll give you a precise breakdown of the final figures in that article. Right, ladies and gentlemen, let us cut straight back to our panel. So gentlemen, let us get underway. Here's the first question. Vessels fitted with BWTSs. What is the requirement for US Coast Guard for BWTS sample water testing? If testing for BWTS discharge water is tested in February 2020 and vessel is again calling at a US port in December 2020, do we need to do ballast water testing again to meet the VGP requirements? Michael, perhaps you can get us underway and then the others can weigh in. Michael.
Well, what the regulation says today is that once you install the system, you're going to have to do 2 VGP testing first year, and then once a year annually. So if the system already been on the vessel for a while, and they did the testing just a couple of months before, no, they can submit the paper to EPA and US Coast Guard and the VGP things, and they should be. Then, of course, it's up to the port authorities if they want to do a test.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything to add, Victor?
No, yeah, I can just add. I mean, Michael is correct. The only thing to add would be that you need to have successful tests 2 consecutive then. So, but yes.
Thank you for that important addition. Girish, obviously welcome your views at any time. Let's jump to a next question. How about live monitoring of samples, similar to the way it's being done for OWS or ODMEs on tanker vessels? Again, I think I'm going to come to Michael first because I think you might have a bit of form in this area. So Michael, if you get us underway with this one and others can follow.
I'm not sure if I caught the question correctly. About living organisms, or what's the?
I'll repeat the question. Others obviously can come in if they have a view. How about live monitoring? So I guess real-time monitoring of samples in the same way that real-time monitoring of samples takes place for OWS or ODMEs on tanker vessels.
Oh, okay. No, you can't really do live sampling because of if you take commission testing that bacteria over 50 micron, you have to collect over 1 ton of water and it's filtered through, and then you can test it. So this is that's how strict regulations are. So you can't do that right away. So you have to collect the sample for half an hour, depends how much water you have, and then you put it out through the indicator table, the testing pit.
Victor.
Yeah, no, I'm just going to add there. I mean, these type, I guess he's or she is talking about some kind of inline monitoring devices, and of course that would really be desirable. But now we're coming back to from my presentation, the challenges with this whole testing is as Michael is mentioning, the different sizes of all these organisms, and you need different ways of testing these and get the correct answer, and that's why it's become so complicated to find really reliable and good solutions here. But if someone would come up with an inline device, that would be, you know, the perfect thing.
Thank you. Girish, we haven't forgotten you're there, so you can always unmute yourself and join the conversation. Girish, would you like to?
What we need to realize here that unlike oil samples or something, we are talking about live organisms that are there in the water actually. So it's not easy to just pick up a few liters of water or just a sample from the water and say that yeah, it's all safe, because we are talking about organisms that reproduce and sort of generate itself. So the testing methods and the different ways of finding out these different microorganisms, I don't think there is anything that you can get a live test right now out of.
A fairly uniform from the panel. Please mute yourselves, gentlemen, if not speaking. The next question is a very pertinent and regulatory driven one. How does the MEPC resolution 206 open bracket 62 allow alternative ways to comply with the D2 standard other than BWTS affecting sampling procedures, and does this occur within the industry at all? Maybe Victor, you could get us rolling on that one.
I can try with some initial thoughts. I'm not 100%. I understand the exact question, but if there's allowing for alternatives way to comply with the D2 standard with regards to sampling procedures, I mean, when IMO will ratify and get this into place, which is earliest May 2022, if we're talking about the actual commissioning testing, I think this will be what's going to go for all flag state that is part of the IMO, and if there's alternative ways to comply with it, I can't see that, but maybe some of the others can help me out here, because I'm not fully sure I understand the question.
Michael, please come in.
I was afraid you were going to ask me.
Okay.
I'm like Victor. I'm not sure if I understand the question, but if it's also that if the system is not working, no. I mean, the regulations start to get enforced, and you can't really. You have to have your system working, because the great thing for the last 10 years with the system has been installed. Most of them, a lot of them didn't work, but they never officially was installed. So they did ballast water exchange. Now when you have ballast water treatment system on the ship, you're going to have to use it. I don't know if that was the correct answer, but that's...
But maybe we can ask the participant to clarify the question a bit more, and then we can come back with a good answer afterwards.
Great idea, Victor.
Yeah.
Michael, you mentioned ballast water exchange. Here's another question, and I invite any and all of the panel to respond on it. When BWMS is certified D2 and you're experiencing trouble, are you permitted to do an exchange of ballast at mid-sea? Does the convention allow for that?
I can start if you like. I mean, not really, to be honest, or it doesn't. But I mean, you have to define in your ballast water management plan what kind of contingency measures you have for your ballast system in case of malfunctioning. And I mean, we have seen in many ballast water management plans that ballast water exchange becomes one of these measures that they would like to take in case of malfunctioning uptake of ballast water. So, and we're also seeing then that flag state has approved this as such as a measurement. But the simple answer is no, that's not allowed. But there is a but that's up to you to state and get approved.
Thank you. Girish?
Yeah, it is. It's part of the ballast water management plan. You can define in your ballast water management plan. In case of something going wrong and it affects the vessel's safety, and in such cases, you can adopt ballast water exchange, but it has to be clearly defined of how you plan to do it, and it has to be approved by the flag. You have to include it in the ballast water management plan.
Thank you very much. Let's take another question. Let's take another question, gentlemen. What is your position? Maybe Michael, you'll get us underway on this one. What is your position on potential accumulation of organisms in tanks over time? How do you think owners can deal with regrowth in tanks? So perhaps Michael first, and then Victor, and of course Girish. Welcome.
Well, I mean, if we take Alfa Laval, for instance, I mean, that UV system, it's not so critical because they treat the water at discharge as well. That's advanced with UV. Active substance, it's that you make sure that you have enough active substance in the water when the water reach the ballast tanks, so it lasts there until you have to discharge, and that's why you have a so-called TRO sensor and this kind of thing. So it's similar. Otherwise, it will be amazing how quickly regrowth can happen, even if you have cleaned the ballast tanks, because even with 40 micron filter, you will have mud and these kind of things that come into the ballast tanks, and you will have a sediment. So that is very critical, that you have to make sure that you have a system that will keep, treat the water during the voyage, or like a UV, you treat it at the deballast as well.
Thank you. Victor, do come in.
Well, I can only echo what Michael is saying. I mean, this is the exact reason why it's so important for us that we do treat our water on the discharge as well with our UV reactor. And I mean, this is a risk, and we take out that risk by treating the water again.
Thank you. Girish, yes, please.
Yeah, that question is actually the main reason why choosing the right system and the right thing is most important, because you just don't get to know until actually it will be while testing that you finally realize that something has gone wrong. So it's important that you treat while discharging and also use a system that works and it's proven.
Thank you. Most of the BWMS, says one of our delegates, cannot operate in muddy water or brackish water. What is the solution for D2 certification at ports when ballast or in deballast operation? Is it found that it can partly run without any trouble at sea? And what about trouble at port? So let me bring that question front and center. Digest it, gents, and I invite one of you to come in. Victor?
Yeah, I'm just going to read it for myself here. I guess the question is, if we run into if any kind of system runs into being out of compliance because of its limitations, either because of the clarity of the water or other things, I guess the question is what can be done. And here I would again say that this needs to be clearly defined in the ballast water management plan, because that would be one of the instances where you for some reason are out of compliance, and either you have to run your system due to emergency, and then you will bypass your system, or you continue to run it as is, but the system will give you a notification that you might be out of compliance, and then your ballast water management plan needs to kick in on what contingency measures you will be using. And as we discussed previously, one of them might be to do a ballast water exchange if that is in there and has been approved by your flag state. But I would say, I mean, in general, for muddy waters, there are a lot of things that can be done to avoid that, especially from where you take up the water, etc. And with our system, you can also, to some extent, lower the flow to ensure that it runs sufficient. Yeah,
Thank you.
I'm not sure if that's answering the question, but it's some initial thoughts at least.
It's very helpful. Thank you. If anyone have an immediate thought on that, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, it was like what Guru said before. It's very, if you're lucky enough to have a long-term charter, you know your route. Then you actually, if you can select a system based on that. On your spot market, no, that's going to be a problem. But otherwise, this is so important to know what technical solution is best for your vessel. Because as Victor said, yeah, in certain water, like muddy water, dirty water, one solution is not working so well. And this kind of thing. So that's, I just want to add, it's very important you know the technologies when you select the system.
Okay, I want to, conscious of time, I want to concertina in 3 questions, gentlemen. So if you need to make notes, all well and good. Here's the first one, and it's a very good one. Is there a link between BWMS types and or filtration levels and vessels failing commissioning testing or D2 sampling? This is the first question. Is there a link between BWMS types and or filtration levels and vessels failing commissioning testing or D2 samplings? Second one is, please can you confirm that once a system is certified to the D2 standard, there is no need to repeat this test at an independent laboratory annually? And the third of 3 questions is it necessary to test inlet water? And if not, should we actually be testing the inlet water? So three questions for the price of one. Victor, you're looking suitably concentrated and composed. So I'm going to come to you first, if that's all right.
I can't even remember all the questions. If we start with the link between the type of system or filtration system and failing these commissioning tests or D2 samplings, I wouldn't say so. I mean, at this point, what we have seen, it's all over the place, depending on the size of the organisms rather than the type of system. But we see certain methods that with our system becomes more accurate than others, but we still see too much inaccuracy in the systems we have tried out to be confident with the indicative analysis. And sorry, what was the second one?
We had a question around once a system is certified to the D2 standard, is there a need to repeat this test at an independent laboratory annually?
No, I mean, back to the VGP for US trade, there you have 2 times the first year and then once a year, but otherwise no. Okay. And the third one?
Inlet water. Should we be testing the inlet water if we're not indeed required already to test the inlet water?
And our recommendation there is yes, absolutely.
Okay. Michael, same 3 questions for you, please.
Start with the inlet water. I mean, the regulations today says that, yes, you should take a sample of inlet water. The new upcoming IMO regulations is gonna be an option. And I think most people, their thought is, well, we are not going to have a tank for special water because it's too much ballast water. Annually testing. We also understand that the new regulation is actually going to have an annual test, and also every time you have the major repair, which is more or less, if you have a special survey, you change the filter element in the filter and these kind of things. What kind of testing this is, I'm not clear of, but there is some kind of an annual testing like the VGP, but I don't know what kind of, if it's just going to be enough with, again, indicator testing and these kind of things, and if the ship has its own equipment, they can do it. Again, and then the last question, which I also forgot.
Is there a link between BWMS types and or filtration levels and vessels failing commissioning testing or D2 sampling?
Not what I'm aware of. I mean, again, it's because most of the manufacturers, they have 40 or 50 micron filter. And so that's not a problem. There is a few systems without filters. We don't have any experience with that, how they comply with the regulation of some operations. Maybe Girish has more about that.
Okay, coming Girish.
Yeah, basically for filtration, See, if you don't filter out the larger organisms, it just obviously means that you have to treat them in the tanks. So that puts a lot of stress on the actual system that's being operated. It means it has to operate at a higher level of treatment within the tanks. So of course, that doing that filtration of bigger organisms absolutely helps for the treatment of the water inside the tanks. And with the one regarding the annual testing, I believe that will be part of the ballast water management requirements on the long run. At some point, there is going to be a requirements for annual testing or testing at whenever there is a major thing taking place on that. So I think it should be expected that it will be a part of the regulations.
And do you have a view on the inlet water question?
No, I don't have anything to add other than what.
No problem. So, gentlemen, another moment's respite for you to collect your thoughts, because I'm going to return to you in the order you presented for your key conclusions and takeaways. You've done a fantastic job and generated more questions than we've had time to get through. So please feel free to scroll through and reference any that you feel we should have dealt with but haven't. And of course, we're going to give responses in any case. More immediately, ladies and gentlemen, I come to you with a third poll question. The results of these polls are probably the second most eagerly anticipated poll results today, I hasten to guess. So here we go. Indicative testing is an effective way to measure successful installation and/or crew competence. So this is a question you respond to on a scale of 1 to 5. If you strongly agree, you'd be 1. If you strongly disagree, you would be 5. And if you're somewhere along the scale, you would be somewhere along the scale, a 2, 3, or 4. Another 12 seconds on that. The gentlemen are just collecting their thoughts, and they'll be sharing their key conclusions and takeaways from today's discussions momentarily. But if you haven't voted, please cast your vote in the next few seconds. And what I will be able to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that the 5th most popular result at this juncture, and results are still coming in, is number 5. The 4th most popular response is actually number 1. So we've gone from one extreme to the other. The 3rd most popular response, which is now the joint 2nd most popular response, is 4 and 3. And the vast majority, I say the vast majority, it is a majority, is number 2. I wonder whether that's actually in line with what our panelists would have predicted. Well, let's go back to them, and in the order that they presented, hear their key conclusions and takeaways, meaning, Michael, you're up first. Please unmute yourself, Michael.
Sorry. Yes, I mean, it's a lot of uncertainty here, and what I took from here is one of the major things is how important it is select correct system based on your trading. That's not only technology, but also the routes and these kind of things. Others select a reputable engineering company and have it make sure it's do the proper installation, because if a leaking valve, you will fail. And third, well, again, I believe that testing is not the penalty. Testing is actually that can confirm that you can trade your vessel.
Thank you very much indeed, Michael. Victor, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I think I laughed a bit over the last poll results when you mentioned it, because I think that summarizes a bit. I mean, some think this is super effective to have these type of commissioning testings, and some think it's really ineffective. And I think that's where we are right now, that we are a bit puzzled in the industry about how to deal with this, and we're not 100% ready for it, but we all agree that it's a way forward, I think. My key takeaway is that we as an industry really need to work together to improve these type of measurements and to come to a state where it works for everyone. Because as per today, we say it's indicative testing, we use it as a fact, and the one that is getting punished is actually the ship owner that not that aren't allowed to go out and trade because of a failed test that not necessarily was a failed test. And then I also take as a key takeaway, that to get successful samples, you really need to do a proper engineering. You really need to flush your tanks. You really need to or flush your pipes and clean your tanks, because that's where the biggest mistakes are happening for then not having a successful full test. So I think those are my key takeaways.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed, Victor. If I can invite Girish to share his views, do come in.
Yeah, as I mentioned in my presentation, this has been something that's going on from early 2000 to now we are in 2020, 20 years. And there still seem to be a lot of uncertainties. And now that people have started installing and using, and we are into the testing and commissioning stages, we now have a lot of doubts and concerns about how the testing to be done, how successful it will be, and all these things are still there. It's really sad that the ship owners are having to face the brunt of it. A major portion of the 20 years was spent on actually finding a system that works. And now that people have started installing, people are worried about how the testing will go on. So finally, it comes to the point that Michael just said, it's up to the ship owner to choose the right system and choose the right engineering, so that a trustworthy system is installed and in a proper way, so that whatever test is going to be happening, you get the results that you desire for.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. I think what's not in doubt is that we made the right choice in terms of our panelists today. I think you shed a lot of light on what it takes to be match fit and fit for purpose when it comes to ballast water testing and compliance. There are, of course, outstanding questions. In terms of the outstanding questions that the audience have fired in, have no fear, dear audience, we will be coming back to you on every question in writing within a week or so of transmission. But again, it's a sincere thank you to all of our panelists for a job exceptionally well done. So ladies and gentlemen, what I would like to do now is preview what's coming up. And I'm happy to share with you that we continue with our Ballast Water Webinar Week today, the 4th of November, no less, at 15:30 GMT. We'll be looking at niche solutions and decarbonisation of ballast water treatment systems. Please make a note and register. Next week, an entirely new themed webinar week, and a highlight of that week will be the Thales Vessel Link 200 Accessing Certus with a Small Antenna webinar. 1 o'clock GMT on the 12th. Ladies and gents, Riviera is doing a themed webinar week pretty much every week. In order to keep abreast of our evolving program, please do bookmark rivieramm.com/webinars. Here is also what's coming up in the virtual space. Riviera, in addition to its webinars, is holding a sequence of virtual events. These cover a myriad of sectors, including the offshore support one, tankers, LNG, maritime air pollution, tugs, and new fuels. Be sure to visit our website and visit often and register so that you do not miss out. Riviera, for its part, is of course committed to serving the information that matters most to you. We will do this in a variety of guises through our weekly newsletters, magazines, curated content online that matches your interest, and of course, relevant events such as this. The important thing, ladies and gentlemen, is you do not miss out. In order to ensure you do not miss out, please visit our homepage and register. There's a blue button at the top right hand corner. It takes 2 minutes to do. If that, I suspect you'll do it in a minute, and in that way you're permanently in the loop when it comes to happenings in our sector. Well, more than enough from me. Safe to say, once again, a huge thank you to Michael Haraldson, Victor Freiberg and Girish Menon for a job exceptionally well done. A huge thank you also to you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us in such numbers and from near and far. We'll get those answers to your questions through as soon as possible. I look forward to seeing you all later for niche solutions and decarbonisation of ballast water treatment systems at 3:30 GMT. But for now, I conclude by saying the very biggest of thanks to our premier partner, Maritech, part of the CTI group. An equally big thank you to our sponsor, Alfa Laval, as well, for their generous support. Thank you once again, ladies and gentlemen. And wherever you happen to be in the world, please stay safe and well. And until we reconvene later this afternoon, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and until later, goodbye.